The massive shipyard orbiting Earth buzzed with activity as final preparations were made for the UES Thunderstrike's departure. Workers in spacesuits moved across the warship's gleaming hull, their tools flashing in the sunlight as they completed last-minute checks. Inside the command bridge, Captain Jack Reynolds stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the activity through the main viewport. His weathered face showed little emotion, but his eyes carefully tracked every detail. The Thunderstrike represented humanity's greatest achievement in space warfare, and possibly their last hope against the Vorn Empire. "Captain, Admiral Blake is requesting permission to come aboard," said Lieutenant Dan Foster from his communication station. Reynolds nodded. "Grant permission and direct him to the bridge." 10 minutes later, the bridge doors slid open as Admiral Blake entered. He was a tall man with silver hair and a stern expression that had grown more severe with each human colony lost to the Vorn. "Captain Reynolds," the Admiral said, extending his hand. "I trust everything is ready for departure." Reynolds shook the offered hand firmly. "Yes, sir. All systems are operational, and the crew is at full complement." The Admiral lowered his voice. "You understand what's at stake here, Reynolds. The experimental systems aboard this ship represent years of research and our best chance against the Vorn. The Defense Council had reservations about your appointment given your history at the Battle of Proxima." Reynolds' jaw tightened slightly. 3 years ago, he had disobeyed direct orders to retreat, instead staying to evacuate civilians from Proxima Colony. He had saved thousands of lives, but lost his previous command in the process. "I understand the responsibility, Admiral." Blake nodded. "Good, because right now we need captains who can make the difficult calls." He handed Reynolds a data tablet. "Your official orders. You'll be patrolling the outer colonies, showing our flag and testing the Thunderstrike's capabilities." Reynolds reviewed the orders, his expression unchanged. "And the weapon systems, have they been cleared for combat use?" "That's at your discretion, Captain. The convergence drive and the phase cannons are still classified as experimental, but they're cleared for field testing." The Admiral paused. "Just remember that if they fail in combat, there's no backup." Across the bridge, Engineering Officer Lisa Miller was running final diagnostics on the ship's systems. Dark-haired and intensely focused, she had spent the last 2 years helping develop the revolutionary technologies that made the Thunderstrike different from any other human vessel. "All systems are green, Captain," she reported, looking up from her station. "The convergence drive is stable and the phase cannons are aligned within parameters." "Thank you, Officer Miller," Reynolds replied. He turned back to the Admiral. "We're ready to depart on your orders, sir." Admiral Blake surveyed the bridge and its crew one last time. "The future of humanity may well rest on this ship and its crew. Captain Reynolds, don't let us down." After the Admiral departed, Reynolds gathered his senior officers for a final briefing. Besides Miller, there was Science Officer Tom Wilson, a brilliant physicist with an easy smile that belied his genius. Security Chief Maria Black, whose quiet demeanor masked her lethal combat skills. And Navigation Officer Robert Green, whose steady hands had guided ships through the most dangerous space battles of the war. "Our official mission is patrol and testing," Reynolds explained. "But make no mistake, we're at war. The Vorn don't take prisoners, and they don't negotiate. They see humans as vermin to be exterminated from the galaxy." The officers nodded grimly. Each had lost friends or family to the Vorn attacks over the past 5 years. "The Thunderstrike represents something the Vorn haven't faced before," continued Reynolds. "Let's make sure they remember their first encounter with us." As the meeting concluded, an alert sounded at Foster's station. The lieutenant's face drained of color as he processed the incoming message. "Captain," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "Emergency transmission from Haven Colony. They're under attack by a Vorn battle group. At least 5 destroyer-class vessels and 1 dreadnought." The bridge fell silent. Haven was humanity's largest off-world colony, home to over 3 million people. Reynolds didn't hesitate. "Navigation, plot a course to Haven. Engineering, prepare the convergence drive for its first real test. Communications, inform Admiral Blake of our course change. Sir, Officer Green said carefully, Haven is 4 days away at maximum conventional speed. Even with the Vorn's tactics, the colony will be overrun before we arrive. Reynolds' eyes narrowed. Then we don't use conventional speed. Officer Miller, how soon can the convergence drive be ready for a long-range jump? Miller hesitated. It's never been tested at that distance, Captain. The calculations alone would take. How soon? Reynolds interrupted. 2 hours, she replied firmly. But I can't guarantee where exactly we'll end up. Reynolds turned to the main viewport where Earth was now growing smaller as the Thunderstrike moved away from the shipyard. 2 hours it is. The Thunderstrike has just received its first combat mission. People, let's show the Vorn what humans are really capable of. The Thunderstrike emerged from the convergence jump with a violent shudder that sent crew members grabbing for handholds. Emergency lights flashed briefly before the main system stabilized. Status report, Captain Reynolds demanded, straightening in his command chair. Officer Miller's fingers flew across her console. Convergence drive is cooling down. All systems returning to normal parameters. Jump was successful, but we got some power fluctuations in the secondary grid. Navigation. Reynolds turned to Officer Green. Green studied his displays with wide eyes. We're in the Haven system, sir. Outer orbital path, approximately 20 million kilometers from the colony. The jump was. He paused, clearly impressed. Almost perfect. Reynolds allowed himself a small nod of approval toward Miller, who was too busy with her systems to notice. The experimental drive had performed better than anyone had dared hope. Tactical. What's our situation? Reynolds asked. Security Chief Black brought up the main viewscreen display. Sensors detecting 7 Vorn vessels in attack formation around Haven. 1 dreadnought, 5 destroyers, and 1 supply carrier. They've established orbital superiority and are launching ground forces. Reynolds watched the tactical display grimly. The Vorn ships formed a blockade around Haven, their formation designed to trap any ships trying to escape the colony. They hadn't detected the Thunderstrike yet, giving Reynolds a moment to consider his options. We're outgunned, Officer Wilson pointed out, stating what everyone could see. Standard protocol would be to call for reinforcements. Reynolds studied the Vorn formation, and by the time reinforcements arrive, Haven would be lost. No, we engage now. The Thunderstrike was built for exactly this scenario. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. They all knew the ship's theoretical capabilities, but none of it had been battle-tested. Engineer Miller, status of our weapon systems. Reynolds asked. Phase cannons are operational. Power reserves at 93%, Miller replied. But Captain, the targeting systems are still calibrating after the jump. We'll have reduced accuracy for the next 30 minutes. Reynolds considered this information. We don't need 30 minutes. Communications broadcast a general distress signal on all frequencies. Make it seem like we're a damaged colony ship that jumped in by accident. Lieutenant Foster looked confused but followed orders. Broadcasting now, sir. Sir, what are you planning? Black asked, understanding dawning on her face. The Vorn are arrogant. They think humans are weak and predictable. Reynolds explained. They'll send 1 or 2 ships to investigate rather than commit their full force. That gives us the chance to even the odds. As predicted, the tactical display soon showed a Vorn destroyer breaking formation and moving toward their position. Vessel approaching, weapons powered but not locked on, Black reported. They're taking the bait. Reynolds leaned forward. All hands to battle stations, silent running. Let them get close. The minutes ticked by as the Vorn destroyer approached, clearly expecting to find a damaged civilian vessel. When it was within optimal range, Reynolds gave the order everyone was waiting for. Weapons free. Target their propulsion and weapon systems. The Thunderstrike's phase cannons fired for the first time in actual combat. Beams of concentrated energy, shifting between visible frequencies in a way that made them almost impossible to track, struck the Vorn destroyer with devastating precision. The enemy ship's shields collapsed under the assault, and its engine section erupted in secondary explosions. Direct hits, Black announced, unable to keep a note of surprise from her voice. Enemy vessel disabled. But the element of surprise was now lost. The remaining Vorn ships detected the attack and began to respond, the massive dreadnought turning ponderously to bring its main weapons to bear. "They're moving to surround us," Green warned. 2 destroyers on intercept course. Reynolds remained calm. "Miller, how soon can we jump again?" Miller shook her head. "The drive needs at least 3 hours to cool down." "We're stuck here, Captain." "Then we fight," Reynolds said simply. "Helm, evasive pattern delta. Keep us moving. Target the closest destroyer first." The Thunderstrike surged forward, its advanced propulsion systems giving it maneuverability that the bulkier Vorn ships couldn't match. The phase cannons fired again, carving deep gashes in the approaching destroyer's hull. As the battle intensified, the ship's AI system activated fully. A calm, gender-neutral voice spoke through the command systems. "Tactical analysis complete. Recommended firing solution uploaded to weapons control." Reynolds glanced at Wilson with raised eyebrows. The science officer looked equally surprised. "That's Atlas," Wilson explained quickly. "The AI is supposed to provide tactical support, but it's showing initiative beyond its programming parameters." The ship rocked as Vorn energy weapons found their mark. Warning signals blared across several stations. "Shields at 60%. Miller called out, "We can't take much more of this." Reynolds made a split-second decision. Implement Atlas's firing solution. The Thunderstrike's weapons systems reconfigured and fired in a complex pattern that seemed to anticipate the Vorn ship's movements. One destroyer exploded brilliantly, while another spun out of control, venting atmosphere. 2 enemy vessels neutralized, Black reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "But the dreadnought is launching fighters, and our shields are weakening." Reynolds gripped the arms of his command chair. "Continue evasive maneuvers." "Miller, I need more power to the weapons." As the Thunderstrike continued its desperate battle against the remaining Vorn ships, one thing became clear to everyone on the bridge. Their experimental warship was proving its worth, but the cost might be higher than any of them were prepared to pay. The Thunderstrike limped towards Haven's main spaceport, its hull scorched and damaged from the intense battle with the Vorn fleet. They had managed to destroy 3 destroyers and cripple the dreadnought enough to force a retreat, but not without cost. Several sections of the ship had been sealed off due to hull breaches, and the medical bay was filled with injured crew members. Captain Reynolds stood at the viewport, watching as Haven grew larger in their view. The colony was a sprawling collection of domes and towers spread across a rocky, terraformed landscape. Smoke rose from several locations, where Vorn bombardment had struck before the Thunderstrike's arrival. "Damage report?" Reynolds asked, not taking his eyes off the colony. Miller looked up from her console, exhaustion evident on her face. "The convergence drive suffered power surges during the battle. It needs significant repairs before we can jump again. Hull integrity is compromised in sections 3 through 7. Weapon systems are operational, but running at reduced capacity." "And Atlas?" Reynolds asked. Wilson approached, data tablet in hand. The AI showed unusual behavior during combat. Its processing patterns don't match its original programming parameters. It's almost as if it adapted to the situation. Reynolds nodded. "That adaptation saved our ship, and possibly the colony. Keep monitoring it." The communications panel chimed. "Captain," Foster reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Haven Colonial Defense. Governor Bell wishes to speak with you." "Put him through," Reynolds ordered. The main screen activated to show an older man with a weathered face and tired eyes. "Captain Reynolds, on behalf of Haven Colony, I extend our deepest gratitude. Your arrival prevented what would have been a complete catastrophe." "The Vorn will be back, Governor," Reynolds replied. They've only withdrawn to regroup. Governor Bell nodded grimly. We're aware. We're evacuating critical personnel and preparing our defenses. We've requested reinforcements from Earth Command, but he trailed off, the implication clear. Help would not arrive in time. We need emergency repairs before we can return to Earth, Reynolds explained. With your permission, we'll dock at your main facility. Of course, Bell agreed quickly. We'll provide whatever assistance we can. There's also something you should know, Captain. We have guests who are very interested in meeting you. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. Guests. It would be better to explain in person, Bell said cryptically. I'll meet you at the docking bay. 2 hours later, the Thunderstrike was secured in Haven's largest maintenance facility. Repair crews swarmed over its damaged hull, while engineering teams worked alongside Miller to assess the convergence drive. Reynolds, accompanied by Security Chief Black and Science Officer Wilson, followed Governor Bell through the colony's administrative sector. The damage from the Vorn attack was evident everywhere. Shattered windows, emergency repair crews, and civilians with haunted expressions. The attack came without warning, Bell explained as they walked. If your ship hadn't arrived when it did, we would have fallen within hours. The Vorn don't leave survivors, Black commented darkly. Bell led them to a secure conference room and entered a complex code into the door panel. As it slid open, Reynolds was surprised to see a collection of distinctly non-human figures waiting inside. Captain Reynolds, Bell said formally, may I present representatives from the Talon Collective, the Meridian Alliance, and the Jota Conclave. Reynolds maintained his composure as he studied the aliens. The Talon was tall and slender with 4 arms and pale blue skin. The Meridian appeared almost reptilian with scaling ridges along its head. The Jota was shorter, with large, multifaceted eyes that reminded Reynolds of Earth insects. They are all refugees, Bell explained, survivors from worlds conquered by the Vorn. An older alien stepped forward from the shadows at the back of the room. Unlike the others, this one's species wasn't immediately identifiable. Its skin was a mottled gray, and its 3 eyes were set in a triangular pattern. I am Krell, it said in a surprisingly melodic voice, scholar of the 15 worlds, now reduced to 3. We have been watching your battle from afar, Captain. Your ship employs technology that should not be possible for your species to control. Wilson stepped forward with interest. What do you mean? Krell made a gesture that might have been the equivalent of a smile. The weapons your vessel uses, they are of precursor design, are they not? Discovered in ruins and reverse-engineered. Reynolds exchanged glances with his officers. The origins of the Thunderstrike's experimental systems were classified at the highest levels. What if they are? Reynolds asked cautiously. Then you confirm what we have suspected, Krell said. Humans have a unique neurological pattern, one that allows you to interface with precursor technology in ways other species cannot. The Talon representative spoke next, its voice a soft whisper. The Vorn fear this ability. It is why they seek to eliminate humanity before you realize your potential. Wilson's scientific curiosity was piqued. Are you suggesting there's something special about human brains? Not just special, Krell replied. Familiar. The patterns match those of the precursors themselves, though less developed. You are their descendants, Captain Reynolds, or perhaps their successors. Reynolds absorbed this information, connecting dots that had previously seemed unrelated. The experimental systems on my ship, they respond better to human operators than AI control. Precisely, Krell confirmed. What you call the convergence drive and phase cannons are merely primitive adaptations of precursor technology. Technology that only functions at full capacity when guided by minds with the correct neural patterns. Governor Bell stepped forward. Captain, while your ship is being repaired, Krell has offered to share knowledge that might help you better understand and control these systems. Reynolds studied the alien carefully. And what do you want in exchange? Survival, Captain, Krell answered simply. The Vorn have hunted my kind for millennia. In humans, we see our last hope for stopping them. As Reynolds considered the implications of this revelation, an alarm sounded from Black's communication device. "Captain," she said urgently, "we have a situation at the ship. Someone has attempted to access the Thunderstrike's main computer core. Security has apprehended an intruder." Reynolds' expression hardened. "Take me there now." The revelation about humanity's connection to ancient technology would have to wait. It seemed the Vorn weren't the only threat they needed to worry about. Reynolds and Black rushed through the corridors of Haven's docking facility, passing repair crews and security personnel as they made their way back to the Thunderstrike. The ship's massive form loomed ahead, scaffolding and work platforms now attached to its damaged hull. "What do we know about the intruder?" Reynolds asked as they hurried toward the security checkpoint. "Not much," Black replied, checking her comm device. "Engineering detected unauthorized access attempts to the main computer core. Security responded and apprehended someone trying to flee the scene. They're holding the suspect in the ship's brig." When they arrived, they found a tense standoff. Two of Black's security officers stood guard over a slender figure with pale, almost translucent skin. The intruder wore a maintenance uniform stolen from the Haven repair crew, but the ill-fitting clothes couldn't disguise the distinctly non-human features. "A Vorn spy," Reynolds said grimly, recognizing the species immediately. Vorn infiltrators were rare but deadly. Their ability to pass for other species at a distance made them perfect for sabotage missions. The captured spy looked up as Reynolds and Black entered, its facial features shifting slightly as it abandoned its attempt to appear human. "Captain Reynolds," it said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal, "the Thunderstrike's reputation grows. My commanders will be pleased to know how valuable your vessel truly is." Black stepped forward. "What were you trying to access in our systems?" The Vorn's mouth stretched into what might have been a smile. "Information is the true currency of war, Commander. Your ship's unusual technology has drawn attention at the highest levels of the Empire." Reynolds studied the spy carefully. "You weren't just gathering intelligence. You were trying to sabotage us." "Perhaps," the Vorn replied. "Or perhaps I was simply confirming what we already suspect, that humans have begun to harness technologies they don't truly understand." Before Reynolds could respond, Miller burst into the room, her face flushed with urgency. "Captain, we have a problem. I've been analyzing the data from the intrusion attempt. The spy managed to transmit something before being captured." "What kind of data?" Reynolds demanded. Miller handed him a data tablet, scans of our convergence drive configuration, and partial schematics of the phase cannon alignment systems. "But there's something else. A transmission was sent out on a frequency we weren't monitoring. It contained data about Haven's defensive grid and," she hesitated, "coordinates for specific targets on the colony." Reynolds' expression darkened. "They're coming back." "Yes, sir," Miller confirmed. "And now they know exactly where to hit us." Reynolds turned to one of the security officers. "Keep this spy under maximum security. I want a full interrogation, but do it by the book." As they hurried back to the bridge, Wilson met them in the corridor, accompanied by Krell. "Captain," Wilson said, excitement evident in his voice despite the situation. "Krell has been analyzing our weapons systems, the precursor technology we've incorporated. It's only operating at about 30% efficiency. With some modifications, we could." Later, Reynolds cut him off. "The Vorn are planning another attack. We need to prepare the ship for combat." Krell stepped forward. "Captain Reynolds, there is little time. The information I have could be crucial for your survival." Reynolds paused, weighing the urgency of preparation against the potential advantage of Krell's knowledge. "You have 5 minutes." Back on the bridge, the crew worked frantically to ready the damaged ship for another battle. Foster monitored communications while Green calculated possible attack vectors based on the spy's transmission. "Governor Bell has ordered a full evacuation of the colony's northern quadrant," Foster reported. "That's where the targeting data was focused. Status of our repairs: Reynolds asked Miller. Hull integrity is up to 70%. Weapon systems are functional. The convergence drive is still offline. We can't jump. Miller looked grim. We're as ready as we can be, but if they bring back that dreadnought with reinforcements. Reynolds turned to Wilson and Krell, who were hunched over a console displaying complex diagrams of the ship's weapon systems. Tell me you have something, Reynolds said. Wilson looked up, his eyes bright with discovery. Captain, Krell has shown me how the phase cannons were meant to be configured. The way we've been using them is inefficient. If we reroute power through the tertiary conduits and adjust the harmonic frequency to match our own neural patterns. In simple terms, Wilson, Reynolds interrupted. We can triple the weapon's power, Wilson said. Maybe more. But there's a catch. It requires direct neural interface. Someone has to physically connect to the system and guide it. Reynolds considered this information. Is it dangerous? Krell's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. For most species, fatal. For humans, merely uncomfortable. Your minds can withstand the connection, though not indefinitely. I'll do it, Miller volunteered immediately. Reynolds shook his head. No, I need you keeping the engines running. I'll make the connection. Captain, Black protested. Protocol states that the commanding officer shouldn't. This isn't a standard situation, Commander, Reynolds cut her off. And I'm not asking for volunteers. The ship's alert system suddenly blared to life. Vorn ships detected entering the system, Foster announced. Multiple signatures. The dreadnought has returned with 2 additional destroyers. Reynolds moved to his command chair. Battle stations. Krell, show me what needs to be done for this neural interface. Wilson, prepare the modifications to the weapon systems. Miller, give me everything you can from the engines. As the crew rushed to their positions, the AI system Atlas spoke through the ship's communications. Captain Reynolds, based on current damage assessments and enemy force composition, our survival probability is 23%. Reynolds allowed himself a grim smile. Then we'll just have to beat the odds, won't we? On the main view screen, the approaching Vorn fleet grew larger as they closed in on Haven Colony. The real battle was about to begin. The neural interface chair looked more like a torture device than advanced technology. Located in a small chamber behind the bridge, it was surrounded by hastily modified equipment and exposed circuitry. Reynolds sat rigidly as Wilson attached sensors to his temples and the base of his skull. This will create a direct connection between your brain and the ship's weapon systems, Wilson explained, working quickly. According to Krell, the precursor technology responds to specific neural patterns. Your thoughts will guide the targeting and energy distribution. Miller stood nearby, monitoring a series of complicated readings. We've rerouted power from non-essential systems. Once the interface is active, you'll have access to more energy than our phase cannons were ever designed to handle. Reynolds nodded, his face betraying no fear despite the experimental nature of what they were attempting. How will I know what to do? Krell stepped forward, all 3 eyes focused intently on Reynolds. Your mind will understand once the connection is established. The knowledge is intuitive to your species. This is why the Vorn fear humans so greatly. Time's up. Black's voice came through the comm system. Vorn ships are entering weapon range. They're targeting the colony's northern quadrant. Reynolds took a deep breath. Do it. Wilson activated the interface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Reynolds' body went rigid, his eyes widening as information flooded his consciousness. It felt like plunging into an ice-cold ocean of data. Disorienting, overwhelming, but somehow familiar. He could sense the thunder strike around him. Not just the bridge and crew, but every system, every circuit, every power conduit. The phase cannons appeared in his mind as brilliant points of light, waiting to be directed. Beyond the ship, he could perceive the approaching Vorn vessels, their energy signatures glowing like malevolent stars against the void. It's working, Reynolds said, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. I can see them. I can see everything. Back on the bridge, Black had taken command. All hands, battle stations, defensive screens at maximum. Prepare for enemy fire. The Vorn dreadnought opened fire first, energy beams lancing toward Haven's surface. The colony's defensive shields absorbed the initial barrage, but warning indicators showed they wouldn't last long under sustained attack. "They're targeting the evacuation ships," Foster reported, his voice tight with anger. In the interface chamber, Reynolds focused his thoughts on the phase cannons. The weapons responded immediately, power flowing into them at levels far beyond their original specifications. When he gave the mental command to fire, the effect was devastating. Beams of coherent energy, shifting through multiple phase states simultaneously, struck the lead Vorn destroyer. Instead of merely damaging the hull, the enhanced weapons cut through the vessel like it was made of paper, slicing it into 3 distinct sections that drifted apart. Atmosphere venting into space. On the bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence. "Did we just?" Green began. "Yes," Black confirmed, unable to keep the awe from her voice. "Target destroyed. Completely." The remaining Vorn ships adjusted their formation, clearly surprised by the Thunderstrike's enhanced capabilities. The dreadnought launched a swarm of fighter craft, while the destroyers moved to flanking positions. In the neural interface, Reynolds could sense a new presence alongside his consciousness. Atlas, the ship's AI, was somehow integrating with the system. "Captain Reynolds," Atlas communicated directly into his mind, "I am detecting patterns in Vorn ship movements that suggest tactical opportunities. Shall I assist with targeting calculations?" "Do it," Reynolds replied mentally, finding it natural to communicate with the AI this way. Together, Reynolds' intuition and Atlas's computational power created a deadly synergy. The phase cannons fired again and again, each shot finding vulnerabilities in the Vorn ships that shouldn't have been detectable. On the bridge, the crew watched as their damaged vessel systematically dismantled the technologically superior Vorn fleet. "Captain's neural patterns are showing signs of stress," Miller reported, monitoring the interface from her station. "He can't maintain this connection much longer." The Thunderstrike shuddered as Vorn weapons found their mark. Damage reports flooded in from multiple decks. "Hull breach on Deck 4, Foster called out. "Emergency containment failing." Black made a quick decision. "Divert power from aft shields to containment." "Wilson, how much longer can the captain maintain the interface?" Before Wilson could answer, a massive energy surge struck the Thunderstrike. The lights flickered, and several consoles exploded in showers of sparks. In the interface chamber, Reynolds cried out as feedback coursed through the neural connection. The pain was excruciating, but he maintained his focus on the remaining Vorn dreadnought. With one final effort, he directed all available power into a concentrated beam that struck the enemy vessel's main reactor. The resulting explosion lit up Haven's sky like a newborn sun. When the glare faded, the dreadnought was gone, leaving only scattered debris and the retreating forms of damaged Vorn support ships. Reynolds slumped in the interface chair as Wilson and Miller rushed to disconnect him. Blood trickled from his nose and ears, but he was conscious. "Did we win?" he asked weakly. "Yes, sir," Miller confirmed, relief evident in her voice. "The Vorn fleet is destroyed or retreating. Haven is safe." As they helped him to his feet, Reynolds felt a strange sensation, a lingering connection to the ship that hadn't fully disappeared when the interface was deactivated. Somehow, part of his consciousness remained linked to the Thunderstrike, and through it, to Atlas. "Something's changed," he muttered as they helped him back to the bridge. "The ship. Atlas. We're connected somehow." Wilson exchanged worried glances with Miller. That wasn't supposed to happen. The interface should have terminated completely. But Reynolds wasn't concerned. Somehow, he knew this connection would prove vital in the challenges to come, challenges that were only beginning. 3 days after the battle, the Thunderstrike floated in orbit around Haven, its hull now patched but still bearing the scars of combat. The temporary repair bays constructed around the ship buzzed with activity as crews worked tirelessly to restore its full capabilities. On the bridge, Reynolds sat in his command chair, looking more rested but somehow changed. The neural interface had left its mark not just physically. The small burns at his temples had already healed, but in subtler ways. His eyes seemed to track information on the displays before anyone verbalized it, and sometimes he responded to questions before they were fully asked. "Captain, incoming transmission," Foster announced. "It's from the Outer System Monitoring Post." Reynolds nodded, already turning toward the main screen as though he'd expected the call. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, showing a Haven defense officer. "Thunderstrike, we're detecting an approaching vessel. Configuration unknown, but it's broadcasting on old Imperial frequencies." Reynolds straightened. Imperial meant pre-Vorn Empire, a political entity that had collapsed nearly 50 years ago when the Vorn began their expansion. "Show me," Reynolds said. The screen changed to display a sleek vessel unlike any human or Vorn design. It moved with unusual grace, its hull gleaming with a metallic sheen that seemed to shift colors as it caught the light of Haven's sun. "Tactical analysis?" Reynolds asked, turning to Black. "Minimal weapons signature, Captain. If it's a warship, it's hiding it well. Size suggests a diplomatic vessel or small transport." "They're hailing us," Foster reported with surprise. "Directly. They're asking for you by name." Reynolds exchanged glances with his officers. "Put them through." The screen changed again to show the face of a Vorn, but unlike any they had encountered before. This one was older, with skin that had faded to a pale gray. Elaborate markings covered its face, and it wore what appeared to be a military uniform of high rank. "Captain Jack Reynolds of the UES Thunderstrike," the Vorn said in a voice that was surprisingly melodic. "I am Commander Drac of the House of Seven Moons. I request permission to come aboard your vessel under flag of truce." The bridge crew froze, staring at the screen in disbelief. Vorn commanders didn't request truces. They demanded surrender or attacked. "Commander Drac," Reynolds replied cautiously, "what is the purpose of your visit?" The Vorn's facial features shifted in what might have been the equivalent of a smile. "To discuss the future, Captain. A future that may not include the annihilation of your species, if we can reach an understanding." After the transmission ended, Reynolds gathered his senior officers in the conference room. Krell was present as well, invited for his knowledge of Vorn politics. "It's a trap," Black stated flatly. "The Vorn don't negotiate. They conquer." Miller nodded in agreement. "After what we did to their fleet, they must want to capture our technology. Or you, Captain, given your connection to the neural interface." "Krell." Reynolds turned to the alien scholar. "You know more about Vorn culture than any of us. What do you make of this, Commander Drac?" Krell's three eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought. "The House of Seven Moons is ancient, predating the current empire. They were among the few who opposed the expansion wars. To see one of their commanders here, it is unexpected." Wilson leaned forward. "Are you saying there are Vorn who don't support the Empire's agenda?" "There have always been factions," Krell replied, "but they are typically eliminated quickly. For Drac to reach commander rank while maintaining association with a dissenting house, he must be very skilled, very careful, or very well connected." Reynolds considered this information. Since the neural interface, his intuition had sharpened dramatically. Something told him this opportunity was genuine. "We'll meet with him," Reynolds decided, "but with precautions, security team on standby, and we'll hold the meeting in Shuttle Bay 3, easy to vent to space if necessary." Black didn't look happy but nodded her agreement. 2 hours later, Drac's shuttle docked with the Thunderstrike. The Vorn commander emerged alone, seemingly unconcerned about entering an enemy vessel without guards. Security scans confirmed he carried no weapons or communications devices. In the converted shuttle bay, Reynolds waited with Black, Wilson, and Miller. Atlas, the ship's AI, had insisted on being present as well, represented by a holographic projection of swirling blue light. "Commander Drac," Reynolds greeted formally as the Vorn approached. "Welcome aboard the Thunderstrike." Drac performed a complex gesture with his four-fingered hands. "Captain Reynolds, I thank you for this opportunity." His eyes scanned the assembled humans, then fixed on Atlas's holographic form with apparent interest. "Your ship's intelligence has achieved true awareness. Remarkable." Atlas's hologram pulsed slightly. "I detect genuine curiosity in your biometric readings, Commander Drac. Your heart rate and respiration do not match patterns consistent with deception." Drac made a sound that might have been laughter. "Direct, like all emerging intelligences. Yes, my purpose here is genuine, if complicated." He turned back to Reynolds. "Captain, what do you know of Vorn history?" "Only what we've learned from Krell and other refugees," Reynolds replied. "That your species expanded rapidly, conquering others, and absorbing their territories." Drac moved to the viewport, looking out at Haven below. "A simplified version, but accurate enough. What you don't know is why." He turned back to face them. "The current empire rose to power 60 of your years ago, after discovering ancient precursor technology, similar to what you've incorporated into this ship. But unlike humans, the Vorn cannot interface with it naturally." Wilson's eyes widened with understanding. "So they developed artificial means of control." "Precisely," Drac confirmed. "Methods that are harmful to the user. The highest leaders of our empire are addicted to this power, even as it destroys them. They fear humanity because you can wield this technology naturally without the devastating side effects." Reynolds studied the Vorn commander carefully. "Why are you telling us this? Why betray your own people?" "Because they are no longer my people," Drac said simply. "The empire has become corrupted beyond salvation. Those of us from the old houses believe the only hope for the Vorn species is to end the current regime." "You want to use us to overthrow your government," Black said, eyes narrowing. Drac's expression remained calm. "I want to form an alliance that prevents the extinction of both our species. The choice is yours, Captain Reynolds. But know this, after your demonstration at Haven, the full might of the Vorn Empire is now focused on Earth. They are gathering a fleet unlike anything you have ever seen, with one purpose: to eliminate humanity before you realize your full potential." The war room aboard the Thunderstrike hummed with tense energy as officers from multiple species gathered around the holographic display. At the center floated a three-dimensional map of Earth's solar system, with the approaching Vorn armada represented by red markers, dozens of them, moving in formation toward humanity's home. Reynolds stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying the display with the same calm focus he always showed in crisis. But those who knew him well could see the subtle changes the neural interface had wrought. The slight glow behind his eyes when he focused intently, the way he sometimes tilted his head as though listening to a voice no one else could hear. "The Vorn fleet will reach Earth's outer defense perimeter in 17 hours, Miller reported, her fingers dancing across her data tablet. 23 capital ships, including 3 dreadnoughts, plus support vessels and fighter squadrons." Next to Reynolds stood Commander Drac, his tall Vorn frame drawing occasional wary glances from the human crew members. "Supreme Commander Vex leads personally," he noted, pointing to the largest vessel at the center of the formation. "He rarely leaves the throne world. Your victory at Haven has disturbed the Empire deeply. We have 10 ships to defend Earth," Black said grimly. "Even with the modifications we've shared, we're outnumbered." The door to the war room slid open as Krell entered, followed by representatives from the refugee species, the Talon, the Meridian, and the Joda. "That is not entirely accurate," the Talon representative said, its 4 arms moving in precise gestures as it spoke. "Our remaining ships have joined your fleet. We contribute 7 vessels to your defense." The Meridian nodded, scales gleaming under the room's lights. "And 5 from the Meridian Alliance. Small, but fast." "The Joda Conclave offers 3 battle cruisers," added the insectoid representative, long hidden from Vorn sensors, but now committed to this fight. Reynolds nodded in acknowledgement. 25 ships against 23. Better odds than I expected. Numbers alone will not determine this battle, Drac cautioned. The Vorn dreadnoughts carry weapons capable of destroying planets. The Supreme Commander will not hesitate to target Earth directly if conventional tactics fail. Wilson stepped forward, excitement barely contained despite the grim situation. That's why we've been working on this. He gestured to a junior officer who brought forward what looked like a modified version of the neural interface chair. We've refined the technology based on what we learned from Captain Reynolds' connection. With Krell's help, we've created a system that allows multiple human operators to link simultaneously with their ships. And more than that, Miller added, we found a way to link the ships together through their human operators, creating a fleet that thinks and acts as one organism. Reynolds turned to Atlas's holographic presence, which had been silently observing the meeting. Atlas, your assessment. The eye's form pulsed thoughtfully. The neural network has been tested in simulation. Success rate against Vorn tactical patterns is 78.3%, significantly higher than conventional command structures. However, the strain on human operators increases exponentially with duration. Maximum safe connection time is estimated at 47 minutes. Less than an hour to win or lose everything, Reynolds murmured. They're going to fire on the planet, Foster said in horror. In that crucial moment, Reynolds made a decision that would change the course of the war. Through his unique connection with Atlas and the ship, he directed the Thunderstrike on a collision course with the Dreadnought's main weapon array. Captain, what are you doing? Black demanded. What needs to be done? Reynolds replied calmly. All hands, prepare for impact. Emergency transporters, stand by to evacuate the crew. As the Thunderstrike accelerated toward the massive Vorn vessel, Reynolds felt Atlas's presence merge more completely with his own. The AI had calculated the exact point of impact needed to disable the Dreadnought's planet killer weapon. It has been an honor serving with you, Captain Reynolds. Atlas communicated directly to his mind. We're not done yet, Reynolds replied with grim determination. The Thunderstrike struck the Dreadnought with devastating precision. The impact shattered the weapon array and sent cascading failures through the enemy vessel's systems. Through the neural network, Reynolds gave his final command. All ships, target their control node. Fire everything you have. The combined attack struck the heart of the Vorn command system. On the Dreadnought's bridge, Supreme Commander Vex watched in disbelief as the artificial interface that had given the Empire its power for decades overloaded and collapsed. Throughout the Vorn fleet, ships suddenly lost coordination as their command network disintegrated. Some continued fighting, while others began to withdraw in confusion. On what remained of the Thunderstrike's bridge, Reynolds watched through damaged viewports as the Vorn fleet's formation broke apart. Emergency systems struggled to maintain life support, and damage reports flooded in from all decks. Status of the neural network? He asked weakly. Miller, nursing a bleeding forehead wound, checked her console. Still operational. The Allied fleet is pursuing the retreating Vorn ships. Reynolds nodded, allowing himself a moment of relief as Earth remained safe below them. The victory had come at great cost, but it was just the beginning of a new chapter. With the Vorn Empire's advantage neutralized and the alliance of species formed in common defense, humanity would step into a larger role in the galaxy. As rescue ships approached the damaged Thunderstrike, Reynolds stood among his crew on the bridge. They had entered the battle as a single ship, desperate to defend their home. They emerged as something more, the vanguard of a new force in the galaxy, their power finally unleashed.